Y'all remember this? Is a tree of life to all who grasp it, and whoever holds on to it is happy. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all of its paths are peace. What's it referring to?
Korach.
The Torah. We're studying the Torah this morning a little bit. We had some trouble with this one. It's too big. You know, sometimes you get a drosh that's too big. So this is a showdown. Korach versus Moses. Tonight only. Boy, I tell you what, I talked a little bit about it. This guy saw everything that happened. Everything that happened to Pharaoh and Egypt, and he still doesn't get it. And the sons of Eliab, Manuel and Dathan, Abram. This Dathan and Abram were the called ones of the congregation who contended against Moshe, against Aaron, in the company of Korach. When they contended against Jehovah, and the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed them up together with Korach, when that company died, when the fire consumed 250 men, and they became a sign, but the sons of Korach did not die. Why does that matter? They're still bugging us. They're still bugging us. Exodus 2:14, he said, "Who made you head and judge over us? Did you intend to kill me as you killed the Mitzrayim or the Egyptian?" And Moses feared and said, "Truly, the matter is known." So who saw Moses kill the Egyptian? This is the way, the path, so to speak, of the generations leading up to Amram, which is the son, which is the father of Aaron and Moses. Right there. And on the other side are the troublemakers, some of them. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. Korach, to remove one's covering, which is exactly what happens to him. So Korach is spelled Fe, Vav, Resh. So Korach is, you can see it in Hebrew at the top left, but it's Fe, Vav, Resh. Amen? Always try to stick in a little Hebrew like I know what I'm talking about. So this is a slap down of biblical portions, or could you say, Mabashach? In English, Mabakesh means, what's your problem? Why are you picking on me? You ever had people come and pick on you and say mean things to you, and you're going, what did I do to you? What could I possibly have done to you to make you treat me like this? Sometimes they don't need a reason. Sometimes it's a Jezebel spirit. We've talked a little bit about Jezebel spirits over the years through our droshes, and the sad part about it is that spirit gets in you. You start putting it in other people. Pretty soon, the whole congregation's filled up with this yak, 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 bite, bite, bite. You know, can't be happy. You can't be right. You can't be wrong. And you're talking about people and doing things. That's what happens. That's what's happening in this drosh. And in those days, it came to be when Moshe was grown that he went out to his brothers and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his brothers. So he turned this way and that way. And when he saw no one, he struck the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. There's two things that we can see in this one little passage. So it is a duty of a Hebrew that if you see someone striking your brother, you act against that person. And we say, and when we read this, he says he turned to the left and to the right. Could he have been looking for somebody to come do this for him so we would have to do it? Do you think that could be possibly what's going on? Or was he actually looking to deceive? Was he looking to make sure nobody sees him? Or was he looking for somebody to come? What's the balance, right? So we don't get told this. It's not actually explained to us. But you know, I'm going to say he was looking for someone to help him. And we have always read it wrong. And he went out the second day, and he saw two Hebrew men fighting. He said to the one who did the wrong, "Why did you strike your neighbor?" And he said, "Who made you head and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" So somebody saw him. And that somebody was Dathan and Abiram against Moses. They saw him. They were the two watching him in Egypt. So this is the four rebellions. Moses versus Korach and Reuben. Reuben's kind of thrown in there because he's involved in this 250. But it's Dathan and Abiram against Moses. The second one is Korach against Aaron. The third one, the tribal chiefs against Aaron. And in the end, it's all of Israel against Moses. Four different things. So we'll show you this chart again. So the father of Korach is Korach at the top there, right under the Levite. So he's a Levite, but they're not allowed to actually see or touch any of the implements in the Holy of Holies, because Aaron and his sons walk in and cover them up before they see them. All they're allowed to do is carry them, and they're not even allowed to carry them by hand. They put them on poles. Of course, it's for their own good, right? Because if they were to try to touch something inside of the Holy of Holies, they'd instantly be killed. It's not a type of thing that you can just go in a willy-nilly and do what you want to do. Number 16:1. This is where it starts. Now Korach, the son of Ishah, the sons of Konath, we talked about that earlier, the sons of Levi. So it's working its way back up. From down to Korah on the bottom down there, see him right there? Back up to Korah, back up to Levi. And back up from Levi is Jacob, is Isaac and Abraham. Number 16 begins with Korach rebelling against Moses, and in doing so with the Jezebel spirits causing others to rebel. With him, some were leaders of the community, key members of the council, men of reputation. So that's a big mistake. You know, you don't want to call attention to yourself when you're doing evil. That doesn't sound right, does it? Because you should never be doing evil. So, you know, these men of reputation, we'll talk about them a little bit, but this is a big mistake. This is the start of a really terrible thing, and I mean, there's going to be a lot of people pay the price for this. And Yeshua talks about it a little bit. He says about being deceived, he said, you know, in Mark 13:22, your false messiahs and lying prophets will give signs and wonders and will deceive even the elect if it's possible. So Korach was able to deceive the elect, the ones that actually saw all the things that came down, all the plagues that came down. It's hard to understand how you could see something just a few years earlier and think that you can some way rebel against that. You know, even Pharaoh, who was a god to the Egyptians, thought he could do it. But you know, Korach was ambitious. He was talented, self-confident, aggressive individual, and he thought the community didn't appreciate him because he had all these talents, abilities. All he needs is for a group of leaders to buy in on this plan. He actually talks them into it. He talks into the idea that they're high priest. They can be a high priest. Rodney had some good points this morning talking about that when you got to go behind the veil to get to the Holy of Holies. And these guys wanted to be in there. And Rodney said, yeah, they wanted to be in there, but the trouble was that even when Moses was in there, he had to wear a veil when he came out because the glory of Yahweh was so strong upon him that they couldn't stand it. The people couldn't. And this is just the glow of Yahweh. This is not Yahweh, right? Crazy. This is the first attempt to corrupt the Levitical system that eventually leads up to the time of Yeshua ripping up the money changers. We're foretold about this in Jeremiah 7:11. Has this house which bears my name become a den of robbers in your sight? Yes, I too have seen it, declares Yahweh. We'll see that Yeshua actually says these words. And having entered into the set-apart place, he began to drive out those selling and buying in it, and saying to them, it has been written, my house is a house of prayer, but you've made it a den of robbers. There's Jeremiah 7:11 at the bottom. And another reference is my house is a house of prayer is in Isaiah 56:7. So we think that all we know about the Old Testament is that it's just a bunch of laws and rules and we don't want to follow those. But actually Yeshua, coming back, is quoting from these scriptures. He's quoting from the Tanakh, the old scriptures. And he's saying things over and over again, and he does it in parables. He also does it by repeating it over and over again so we can get it in our brain. You know, that's what we talk about when we say a frontless between your eyes. You've got to get this in your brain. It's got to be the first thing you think about. It's not something you want to dig up. You've got to be the first thing you think about, the very first thing. And a lot of times, you know, we'll be reading scripture or something, and we'll go, oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. That was in the Old Testament. That doesn't apply to me now. I'm born again. But right here we saw where Jeremiah says it. Then we see it again where Yeshua says it. And when we see when Yeshua says it, we don't recognize it because we don't study the Old Testament. We do here, but we didn't when we were in Sunday church because, you know, we go to the church and we watch our watch, and if the guy goes 20 minutes, 22 minutes, we start tapping our watch. Say, why are you going so long? You know, what's up with that? Why can't you just let us out so we can be the first ones to first? Yeah, I got a tea time. Oh gosh, don't tell me about that. That was terrible. Even when I started in this walk, I would, if it went over 1 o'clock, I'd scoot by Dan and slip out the door, you know, because I was going to go play golf at 1:30. I didn't want to be late. And it was always late, right? I could never get to the tea time on time because I wasn't supposed to be playing golf on Saturday, on Shabbat. But it always kind of butted up against my timeline, and my guys would always say, we're on the fourth hole, where have you been? Well, the praying was going long, and I couldn't leave, and, you know, unbeknownst to me, all those things were in a chorus to get me to stop and look around. And when we were going to church on Sunday, on Saturday we would drive by the what was the name of that? Mission Dorado. That's where the congregation first met. And I'd leave sometime in the morning, and if I came back, they would be there in the morning. And when I would come back from town about 2, they'd still be there. And I'd tell Grace, what are they doing there all day? What could they possibly be talking about all day long, you know? Yeah. Unbeknownst to me, they were eating and laughing and talking and having fun. And yeah, that's funny. But we start our walk back into the truth and the truth in Scriptures, which is what Emet HaTorah means in Hebrew, truth in Scriptures. So we learn about these things. Now we're learning about something today. We're learning about how something that happened all those years ago, Yeshua talks about in our time and in our hearts as well. So he made a whip, and he drove them out of there, kicked over their tables, and let the doves free. That's a point we don't talk about much. You know, he wrecks everything, but he makes a simple little deal. Yeshua lets the doves free. He doesn't just kick the gate, kick the pins and hurt them. he actually lets them free, which is a touching thing to think about it. And he was teaching daily in the set apart place, but the chief priests and the scribes and the leaders of the people were seeking to destroy him. In Luke 19:4-8, he says, but they did not find what they might do, for the people were hanging upon him, listening. They were trying to kill Yeshua, but they couldn't because the people were in love with him. You know, that the love we have for Yeshua we talk about from time to time, how much we love him, how much we want him, what we'll do for him. Here they were in his presence, and behind the scenes, the scribes and Pharisees are trying to find a way to kill him, but everything they think of says, well, we can't do this because the people are hanging on his every word. They're following him everywhere he goes. We have to get him set aside somewhere where we can get to him. Not so much unlike what's happening here with Korach and his family. He clearly believed that he had been slighted by his assigned positions. He wanted to be a high priest because every time they broke down the camp, it was Aaron and his sons who would go in the tabernacle and cover the holy furnishings and utensils for transport, while a Korach group couldn't even touch them. And like I said earlier, they only could carry them on poles. But, and this is the part I was having trouble with when I was building this drosh, is that, Moses saw what happened to Aaron's two sons who brought strange fire into the Holy of Holies. And fire came down and consumed them. And there was such a terrible thing that they had to pull them out. Their priestly garments didn't burn, which is another teaching in itself. But that's just a weird thing that happened. So we're going to watch what happens when Moses' righteous anger explodes on Korach. So the Levitical Korach family was chosen by Yahweh to be priests from Israel. So they're chosen, right? They're not. It's not a position you bargain for. Wait, they do bargain for it. Do you know that when Yeshua was here, the priest, the high priest, was a bought and sold position? Did y'all know that? And the high bidder, so to speak, is chosen for that course. And just think about the Levitical priesthood, or all these people didn't own any land, but they got a portion, and it amounted to a lot because there's millions and millions of these people providing money for the Levites to live. You know, the temple treasury was huge. It was just, so these people weren't just poor priests taking care of the duties of the priesthood. They were actually very wealthy, and they were buying and selling this position that was given by God to the Levites, and they would choose from the tribe from the loins of Aaron, and were the ones to be chosen to be the priests, not some other side, not some other priesthood, but the true ones. Aaron's firstborn was an inherited position, high priest after his father. So there's the word there, inherited his position. So here comes Korach. He wants to inherit that, right? He can see there's a little bit of money to be made here. So Korach's second son, Ishar, named his first son Korach. And Korach was a priest, but at his father's, Ishar was the second born of Korach. Korach's firstborn, Arashphor, was never entitled to inherit the highest priest position. This is just telling you how the thing steps down from there. They never were in position. They never were going to be in position to be high priest. And it was gnawing at him, I guess. I mean, just, I'm as good as you. I can do that. I can do that. I have gifts of the Spirit, right? So in 16:3, and they assembled against Moshe and against Aaron and said to them, enough of you. For all the congregation is set apart, all of them. And Jehovah is in their midst. And why then do you lift up yourselves above the assembly of Jehovah? Why do you lift yourself up? You know, and I think the next portion, next week, he says, and maybe in this one, he says, I didn't take a donkey from these folks. I didn't take a dime from these folks. Now they're telling me they're going to assemble against me. And what they're actually doing is assembling against Jehovah. Right? They're not actually against Moses. They want what they inherited, they don't like. What they want is something that Moses has, which wasn't given, wasn't taken, was given. It wasn't assigned. It was assigned to him to be that. It wasn't. They weren't assigned to be. 250 leaders of the congregation. So he gets together these pretty famous men. We talked about this before. We kind of go around in a circle about it. Men of renown. So inside of this tent city, at the very center, is the Holy of Holies. All the tribes are assembled around them in a fashion that looks like a man, like a standing man, with the temple in the middle, tent. And I tell you, you could be anywhere in this tent city. All you have to do is walk to the middle, and then you're in the Holy of Holies, in the presence of Yahweh. You just walk that way. And I'm telling you, there's a set time that Yahweh and Yeshua want to meet with us. A set time. And in that set time, you have to have built a tent, a place of worship. Something you talk every day at the same time. Go to that tent. Pray your prayer. Ask him for things you've on your heart and on your mind. Set aside that time. And that's what they do in this tent. They built this city, and all around the city are all the 12 tribes, and they all have duties, but the very center of the congregation is the Holy of Holies. And they've assembled these 250 leaders to come to Moses in the center of the city, and they're going to tell him, this is what we want you to do. And that's when I says, big mistake, because Yahweh chose him, and he gave them duties, and now they don't like their duties. But these men of renown, so inside of this millions of people are these 250 men of renown. These are the men that the people look up to. That's what Korach's betting on, that they'll be able to convince or sway with their might and their intelligence and their, whatever they've done to get this title of men of renown. They just think they can get what they want. Here's the reaction of Moses when they do that. Yay, oy vey, what are you doing? Right? You're right. God's right behind me. Are you guys nuts? Yeah. That looks just like the guy I know over there. And they gathered themselves against Moses and said to them, and when Moses heard, he fell on his face. And I'll tell you something. Falling on your face, asking for forgiveness, is something we don't do. But here is the guy that actually sits and talks to God. And he spoke to Korach and his company, saying, tomorrow morning, Jehovah shall make it known who is his and who is set apart, and bring him near to him. And let him bring near to him the one whom he chooses. Do this. Take fire holders, Korach and all your company, and put fire in them, put incense in them before Jehovah tomorrow, and it shall be the one whom Jehovah chooses is a set apart one. Enough of you, sons of Levi. Cousins, yeah. Because we're going to go back to Aaron's two sons that brought false fire. Because Moses tells Aaron's brother, get your cousins in there and get those guys out of there. Here the cousins are again, coming back, causing trouble. Sons of Levi. That's funny. So second time this has happened. The first time it happened, it was blind or just dumb ignorance, I think. I think they could have been drinking. We don't know, because they said from now on, no more strong wine, no more drinking when if you're going to be on the Holy of Holies. So they bring their fire pans, and later on they say beat these things into the laver so that they can see themselves when they come before Yahweh. Look in the laver, and it's a mirror looking up at you. You see your face in that mirror. That's an important thing. See, it's really important to note, like I said, that he was in the Exodus from Egypt. He saw all these wonderful things, the parting of the sea, the manna and the water provided by Yahweh. And he knew that Moses had a really special relationship with Yahweh. He knew that after the golden calf, Yahweh threatened to destroy the whole nation. And following the episode of the spies, once again, they brought a bad report. He wants to destroy everything. But both times Yahweh listens to Moses' prayer and Moses pleads not to destroy them, and he honored the request. Korach knew about this special relationship, and he wanted one just like it. But he can. He can have that. We can have that special relationship. We're not so far away. It's not over there. Salvation's not across the sea. It's not on that mountain. It's here, right here.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So what was the connection that Reuben had with this? It's the same kind of firstborn thing, because Reuben was Jacob's firstborn through Leah. The firstborn status was taken away from him after he fell into sin. If left unchecked, sin travels to the fourth generation. Reuben's grandsons, ready? Dathan, Abram, and On, all went into rebellion alongside Korach, and they too leavened after power. Think about that. They brought the Jezebel spirit right into the doorstep of the Holy of Holies. Right there. I mean, we know what can't be in close to proximity of holiness. Can't have sin. Nothing unclean can become next to clean. It's always separated. So, Rodney made a good point about this. They said, we don't want to do what you say. But he says to them, go get your legs. Go get them. And they go scurrying off, right? Woo, we'll be right back. Yeah. So they're still following what he said. It's not like it's new. So 16:24-26, speak to the congregation saying, move away from around the tents of Korach, Dath, and Abiram. So Moses rose up, went to those guys, the elders, and Israel followed him. Israel's watching this. All of Israel's watching this. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, please turn away from the tents of these wrong men. Do not touch whatever belongs to them, lest you be consumed in all their sins. So when we think about in the garden, Yahweh says to Adam and Eve, mainly to Adam, there's one thing you can't do. Right? Can't eat. Can't eat the forbidden fruit. Well, Hava does. Eve does eat of the fruit. And what she says right before that is said right here. Don't even touch it. she said, Yehovah told me I can't eat it. Now I can't even touch it. Adding to the scripture. So the same thing's happening here. Don't even touch what they have, because you'll be consumed by the fire. And here's what happens to them. You know, they fell into the earth opened and swallowed them up. Big stinky sinkhole. Don't lay up your treasures on earth, because what if you had a big building full of Corvettes, and one day a sinkhole opens up right in the middle of it, and all your Corvettes crash into the sinkhole. That actually happened. It actually happened, didn't it? And now it's a Farmers Insurance commercial, and the guy says, I got every one of them back. Amen. We opened up the next day, and I'm going, really? Because don't lay up your treasures here. Your treasures, a treasure awaits you beyond your imagination, beyond what you can conjure up. We talk about the streets are paved with gold, and on the streets are trees providing fruit. And we go about coming in and out of the city, the New Jerusalem coming down. So we want to build up our things here on earth. We want to have, like I wanted a bunch of guitars. I learned to play the guitar when I was in my 50s. And I saw these guys play these. They had these fancy guitars, And I had this little bitty $30 guitar that I bought at the pawn shop. It was a harmonica. People make harmonica made this guitar. Koner? Does that sound right? Y'all know anybody? Anybody know anything about harmonicas? Yeah, me neither. But I noticed the name was the same. And I got this guitar and learned to play. But everybody else that had the guitar had real nice ones. So I started trying to collect guitars. And at one time, I had probably 6 guitars hung on my wall. How many guitars could you play at a time? One. Right, one. And what you do is you end up playing the one that's not on the wall, because it's right there on the ground, right? And I had a really nice guitar that Grace had bought me when I started singing in the Walk to Emmaus things. And I had this guitar on the wall, and I was going to take it down and put it in its case and take it on the wall. I got it, and it fell and broke. It crushed it, it ruined it. And it broke my heart. Of course, I went right down and bought a new one, because that's what you do. You build up your treasures here on earth. My treasure has changed, right? Give that stuff away. But I know about the fruits of the Spirit. I think that love, joy, peace, patience, all those things are what we're trying to do. So let's do this. In response to the rebellion, Yahweh had Korach and 250 with him meet at the entrance of the tabernacle, right there at the entrance. And right there at the entrance, they burn the incense before him. Incense represents our attitude and our character, right? What is the incense? Incense is spirit in your heart. We don't present that now, because Yahweh has provided, Yeshua has provided us a better way. And this incense now represents our character. When we're made in his image, so only increased represent offer him the fruits of his character, fruits of our character. And our characters are to be the mirror of Yahweh's character. Galatians 5:22, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no Torah. Now that's a hard statement to understand. Torah presents all the things in man. How do you do this? Well, why do you do that? Why do you do this? Don't treat your fellow man poorly. Right? That's Torah. So these things There's no teaching against these things. Because if you have these things, you're in Torah. You're fully connected. But Yahweh always has a way. You remember Aaron's first two sons were Nadab and Abihu, who offered strange fire, and Yahweh killed them. So let's talk about that death for a minute. That's small, but I'm going to read it to you so you have to look at it. It's Leviticus 10, 1 through 5, and Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his fire holder and put fire in it, put incense on it, and brought strange fire before Jehovah, which he had not commanded them. And the fire came from Jehovah and consumed them, and they died before him, before Yahweh. Then Moses said to Aaron, this is what Jehovah spoke, saying, by those who come near me, let me be set apart. And before all the people, let me be esteemed. And Aaron was silent. And Moshe called to Michael and to Stephan, the sons of Yazel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, come near, take your cousins from the set-apart place out of the camp. So they came near and took them by their long shirts out of the camp, as Moses had asked them to do. So now that's the second strange fire. It's the first one, now we've had the second one. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, arise from amidst the congregation, let me consume them in a moment. And he fell on his face. They fell on their faces, so Moshe said to Aaron, take the fire holder, put fire in it from the slaughter place, and lay incense on it, and go, hurry to the congregation and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from Jehovah. The plague has begun. And Aaron took it as Moses commanded and ran into the midst of the assembly and saw that the plague had begun among the people. He laid on the incense and made atonement for the people, stood between the dead and the living. Who stands before the dead and the living? Messiah. And the plague was stopped, and those in the plague were 14,700. What a funny number. So we've got a fellow coming to our congregation July 7th. Is it the 7th, Dan? This fellow is a close friend to a lot of us. He has a lot of talents. One of his talents is that he's a very good teacher. His name is Brad Scott. Yeah. So in Numbers 16, 41 through 49, that's what we just read, 44 through 49, that the plague begins. The plague began because clean can't be come close to unclean. And it happens. So something has got to happen. So it's got to be a cleansing come about. So the plague was 14,700, 14,700. It's a numerical value and meanings by Brad Scott. He has a book that talks about this exact thing. So we'll go through this a little bit, see what it's talking about. Aleph is the first one. What do we know about Aleph Tav? I'm the beginning and the end. Aleph is the first letter in Hebrew. Tav is the last. Aleph Tav. So Aleph begins. Aleph begins, it means Yeshua. Dalet is the number 4. It is a door, a path, or an entrance, or a threshold. Thresholds are very important. We talk about thresholds all the time in the round table. Y'all know what the round table is? Yeah. Round table meets after Oneg, And we get in there and we talk about the Torah, Haftorah, and the Brit Kadashah that we read each week and changes each week. So we're talking about a threshold. Zayin, that's the letter over there to the left. It even looks like a 7. Isn't that funny? It's major significance. It's heaven or heavenly completion. All right. 47, Dalet Zayin, is entrance to heaven. This is the numerical numeration for these letters. There's a whole teaching. You know, we talked about this a little bit. You know, we read the black letters, but there's letters that are white right beside them. We never see those. We don't know how to read them. But if you read like this one, see, it says Zayin, Dalet. Well, there's a little, in between Zayin and Dalet is a little figure. You can't see it. But it's kind of like an I or a T or a Va. It's a hidden. So 147 is Aleph, Dalet, Zayin, Yahweh. It's the entrance to heaven. We talked a few weeks ago about how to get back to Eden, back to heaven. You get back to heaven through Yeshua. 1470, Aleph, Dalet, Zayin, Ayin, Yehovah, entrance to heaven. It's to obey. You have to obey to get to this point. It's not like you're going to just get in it on your own, right? It's not nothing you do. Nothing you can do is right, is good enough. So the whole thing, Aleph, Dalet, Zayin, Ayin, Shin, Tav. Aleph, Tav, Yehovah, entrance to heaven to obey. So it says, Yehovah is the entrance to heaven to obey and see the covenant.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
So you put all those together, and here's what it says. Yeshua is the door and entrance to heaven. See and obey the covenant. See and obey Torah. The 14,700 that perished in that instant during the plague, all they had to do, follow Torah, follow Yeshua. But they didn't. The Jezebel spirit came upon them, and they decided they would do it their way. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the 90-10 prophecy. That's in this portion this week. I'm sorry my voice is so dry. That's in this portion. We don't talk much about it. The 90-10. Now, if you know anything about 90-10 in this life, that we have heard that the New Testament doesn't require a tithe of you. Just your heart. If you just give your heart. But it's not that way. It really isn't. Because something that was set in motion by God can't be taken away. It can't be stopped or whatever. If God spoke the universe into order, and we just can't say, oh, we don't like that, right? So in Numbers 17:1, we learn about the offerings, the gift, the tithe of the budding. This is referring a little bit back to when they took all the staffs of all the tribes and stuck them in the Holy of Holies, and he said, the one that buds, that's going to be the new leader. That's going to be the high priest. And of course, we read through that. We find out that not only did it bud, it grew flowers and fruit appeared on Aaron's staff, a staff that he carried, and the same staff that he brought before Pharaoh. Number 17, okay. Given to Yahweh belong to the Levites as an inheritance in return for their service of the tabernacle. This was an ordinance for them forever. Right? It didn't say this is an ordinance for them this week or 2 weeks ago. It's forever. The Levites then tithe from what they were given, a heave offering. So even the tithe is tithed. And tithing is a simple thing. It's beautiful. Tithing is a simple Torah principle of sowing and reaping. If we are faithful, what? He'll be faithful to his promise. That's right. And what is his promise? You reap what you sow. And he doesn't say that to be, some people are going to sow a little bit and reap a whole lot more. That's not how it works. It's a simple principle. It will simply multiply but there's a problem. To not sow the full amount that Yahweh asks will cause his people to live on the amount of the tithe. Does that make sense? He's asked for 10%. That's just your required of you. You can give other gifts. You could give more than that, but that's the requirement. So the tithe, instead of the abundance of the 90, that's what they're going to live on. That's what I lived on. I lived on the 10% for years. And I didn't get it, because I was working hard and I was buying things. I had guitars, but I didn't tithe. A little bit. Every now and then, if I felt guilty or they passed the plate, I'd reach in my pocket and pull out. If I had a 20, I would be looking for a 5. Yeah. So, this is the Torah of sowing and reaping. What I'm talking to you today about isn't anything to do with tithing into a ministry. You're tithing into a principle. You're tithing into the Torah. You're giving your percent. It's so small. It's such a small amount. But still, this small amount builds great things. Did you know? It builds great things. So if you're withholding the 10, that's what he's going to give you to live on. That's hard to believe, but that's truth. I lived it. I would always run out of days before money. The end of the month would come, I didn't have enough money to finish the month, But I had credit card. I had lots of credit cards. And I had a lot of houses. My dad sitting right there came over and goes, "You got 2 houses. We need to pray." And I said, I got this, right? I got this, but I was sinking. I mean, I had bit off a big chew, but I wasn't living Torah. I was living Mickey, right? So I'll tell you today that we live in a great world, provided by Yeshua for us. So love your neighbor as yourself. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorahodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.